In the grim darkness of the far future, there are fates worse than death. For an Imperial Commissar, proud symbol of the Emperor's authority and unwavering discipline, capture by the Orks represents one of the most nightmarish scenarios imaginable. Tonight, we delve into the brutal reality of what befalls these officers of the Officio Prefectus when they fall into the green-skinned hands of humanity's most savage and numerous enemy. The image of a Commissar is one that every Imperial citizen recognizes instantly. The distinctive peaked cap, the long greatcoat, the bolt pistol at the hip, the chainsword or power weapon gleaming in readiness. These are the symbols of Imperial authority, of discipline enforced without compromise, of the Emperor's will made manifest on the battlefield. Commissars stand as pillars of resolve when all others waver, executing cowards with cold efficiency and leading charges that would break lesser men. They are feared by their own troops, respected by commanders, and viewed with mixture of admiration and terror by the rank-and-file guardsmen who serve under their watchful gaze. But what happens when this symbol of imperial might falls? When the peaked cap is torn away, when the greatcoat is stained with blood and grime, when the weapons are stripped from trembling hands? What fate awaits the Commissar who finds themselves not executing deserters, but instead dragged across blood-soaked battlefields by creatures that laugh at death and find joy only in violence? To understand this nightmare, we must first comprehend what the Orks truly are. They are not simply crude aliens with a penchant for violence. They are a species engineered by the ancient Old Ones as living weapons, created to fight in the war in heaven against the Necrons and their Citan masters. Every aspect of Ork physiology and psychology has been shaped toward a singular purpose: endless war. Their green skin allows them to photosynthesize, reducing their need for complex supply lines. Their fungal biology means they reproduce through spores released upon death, ensuring that Ork infestations are nearly impossible to fully eradicate. And their collective psychic gestalt field, the Warg, makes their ramshackle technology function and grows stronger with every Ork gathered together in bloodlust and battle joy. The Orks do not wage war out of necessity, territorial ambition, or ideological conviction. They fight because fighting is literally what they were designed to do, what brings them their only true satisfaction. Concepts like peace, negotiation, or mercy are not simply foreign to them, but fundamentally incomprehensible. An Ork without battle is like a human without air to breathe. It is not merely uncomfortable, but existentially wrong. This creates a horrifying reality for anyone captured by the Greenskins. You are not taken prisoner by an enemy that might ransom you, exchange you, or simply execute you cleanly. You are captured by beings who view your existence solely through the lens of entertainment value, utility as slave labor, or potential as food. There is no Geneva Convention in the grim darkness of the far future. No rules of war that the Orks would acknowledge even if they understood them. There is only the brutal calculus of Ork culture. Are you more useful alive or dead, and for how long? For a Commissar specifically, this horror takes on additional dimensions. These are individuals who have spent their entire lives embodying imperial authority, who have been trained from childhood in the Schola Progenium to represent the Emperor's uncompromising will. They have executed their own soldiers for cowardice, overridden commanding officers deemed insufficient in zeal, and stood as immovable bastions of discipline when all around them crumbled. Their entire identity is built upon the foundation of imperial supremacy, the righteousness of humanity's cause, and their own position as instruments of the Emperor's judgment. Now imagine that identity shattered. Imagine being stripped of your symbols of office, your weapons torn from your hands, your authority rendered meaningless by creatures too simple to even understand what a Commissar represents. Imagine being reduced from judge and executioner to just another piece of meat in the Ork war machine. This psychological dimension adds layers of suffering beyond the physical torments that await. Throughout this exploration, we will examine every aspect of this nightmare. We will delve into the immediate moments of capture when shock and disbelief give way to desperate survival instinct. We will explore the horrifying world of Ork slave camps, where humans are worked to death in service of the endless war. We will investigate the fighting pits, where captured humans are forced to battle each other or face exotic beasts for Ork amusement. We will examine the unique position of commissars as prizes and symbols, and how some Orks view these authority figures differently than common soldiers. Most importantly, we will look at the documented case of Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, arguably the most famous commissar in Imperial history, whose capture by warlord Gazgkul Mag Uruk Thraka provides us with the most detailed account of what such an ordeal entails. Yarrick's experience aboard Gazkul's Space Hulk, his time as a slave, and his eventual escape offer us a window into both the horrors of Ork captivity and the incredible resilience required to survive it. The story of captured commissars is not one of glory or heroism in the traditional sense. There are no last stands here, no glorious deaths for the Emperor. Instead, it is a tale of degradation and survival, of maintaining some core of identity when everything you were has been stripped away, of enduring horrors that would break most minds. It is perhaps the ultimate test of the will that commissars are supposed to embody. Can that iron discipline, that unwavering loyalty to the Emperor, survive when faced not with a clean death in battle, but with the slow, grinding horror of Ork captivity? Understanding Ork psychology and culture. Before we can truly comprehend what happens to captured commissars, we must understand the minds of their captors. The Orks are perhaps the most psychologically alien of all the major Xeno species in Warhammer 40,000, operating on fundamentally different principles than human consciousness. At the core of Ork psychology lies a simple, terrible truth. They were engineered to fight, and fighting is literally the only thing that brings them genuine satisfaction. This is not hyperbole or exaggeration. Modern studies by the Ordo Xenos have confirmed what Commissar Yarrick learned through decades of fighting greenskins. The Ork brain is hardwired for violence in ways that make human aggression look like a passing mood. When an Ork engages in combat, its entire biology responds with what can only be described as joy. Their muscles grow, their intelligence sharpens, their skin darkens to a deeper, healthier green. Battle is not just something Orks do, but what they are fundamentally designed for. This has profound implications for how Orks view prisoners and captives. A human soldier might take prisoners for intelligence value, for ransom, or simply because executing surrendered enemies offends some moral code. An elder might capture enemies for torture and soul consumption, driven by their twisted need to feed their dark god. A Tau might imprison humans to re-educate them toward the greater good. But Orks keep prisoners because they might be entertaining or useful, and the moment they cease to be either, they become food or waste to be discarded. The Ork concept of entertainment itself deserves exploration. What amuses an Ork? The answer is simple but horrifying: violence, chaos, and the assertion of might makes right. Orks find it hilarious when smaller Orks get beaten by bigger Orks. They think it is uproariously funny when their ramshackle vehicles explode, especially if the explosion takes out something else too. They are entertained by watching prisoners fight each other, by throwing humans into pits with squigs or other dangerous creatures, by crude and brutal gladiatorial combat, where the outcome is always death or maiming. There is a strange alien logic to Ork thinking that humans often struggle to comprehend. Orks can simultaneously hold contradictory beliefs without any cognitive dissonance. They can know that their technology is cobbled together from scrap and junk, while also absolutely believing it works perfectly because they think it should. This unique feature of Ork psychology is tied to their powerful Gestalt psychic field, the War, which actually makes many of their beliefs manifest in reality. The War field itself is crucial to understanding Ork behavior. Generated by the collective consciousness of Orks in proximity, this psychic phenomenon serves multiple functions. First, it allows Orks to instinctively recognize who is bigger and therefore in charge, establishing their might makes right hierarchy without need for complex social structures. Second, it warps reality to align with Ork beliefs, making their crude weapons function and their ramshackle vehicles operate when by all laws of physics they should fall apart. Third, and perhaps most relevant to our discussion, it creates a feedback loop where successful fighting makes Orks stronger, which makes them fight better, which makes them stronger still. When an Ork is denied the ability to fight, something terrible happens to it. Observation of captured Orks held in Imperial detention facilities reveals a disturbing devolution. The powerful warrior who was captured begins to grow fat and lethargic. Its skin pales from dark green to a sickly lighter shade. It becomes listless, almost depressed in human terms, though the Ork psyche does not process emotions the way humans do. Remove an Ork from battle long enough, and it will physically devolve, its own biology betraying it because it is not fulfilling its design purpose. This creates a grotesque irony. While Orks suffer when denied combat, they show no such sympathy for their prisoners. Human captives are worked to death, starved, beaten, and treated with casual cruelty that stems not from malice in the human sense, but from utter indifference to suffering. To an Ork, a human's pain is either entertaining or irrelevant, nothing more. The Ork social structure, such as it is, also impacts how they treat prisoners. Ork society is ruled by the principle of might makes right, with the biggest and strongest Orks, the war bosses and warlords, commanding absolute authority over those smaller than themselves. This hierarchy extends to other species as well. Humans, being smaller and weaker than Orks, are automatically at the bottom of any Ork social order. A captured Commissar, regardless of their rank among humans, is just another small, weak creature to the Orks. However, there are fascinating exceptions and complications to this general rule. Some Orks, particularly the more intelligent ones and those who have fought humans extensively, begin to recognize patterns and hierarchies among their enemies. They notice that some humans give orders and others obey. They observe that humans wearing certain uniforms or carrying certain weapons seem to fight harder or more competently, and in rare cases, they develop a peculiar respect for particularly dangerous or interesting opponents. This brings us to the concept that the Orks call scumgrod, sometimes roughly translated as favorite enemy, though the meaning is more nuanced. A scumgrod is an opponent who provides such excellent fighting that the Ork genuinely does not want them to die, because life would be less entertaining without them to fight. This is not friendship, as humans would understand it, nor is it respect in the human sense. It is more akin to a hunter treasuring a particularly challenging quarry, wanting the hunt to continue because ending it would remove a source of joy. Kazgukul Mag Uruk, Thraka's relationship with Commissar Yarrick, exemplifies this perfectly. The prophet of Gork and Mork, the most dangerous Ork warlord in the galaxy, could have killed Yarrick on multiple occasions. During their second encounter, Gazkul captured the Commissar and could have executed him at any time. Instead, he imprisoned Yarrick, observed him, tested him, and ultimately released him. Not out of mercy, but because Gazkul found Yarrick too interesting to simply kill. The fight was more important than the victory. This alien psychology means that commissars, especially those with reputations or distinctive characteristics, might be treated differently than ordinary prisoners. A commissar who has fought Orks many times, who has killed Ork nobs or war bosses, who has displayed the kind of stubborn refusal to die that Orks themselves value, might become a prize. Not honored in any civilized sense, but preserved for entertainment, for showing off to other Orks, for the bragging rights of having captured a proper scrap. Understanding Ork culture also requires examining their different clans. as these tribal divisions can affect prisoner treatment. The Goths, largest and most aggressive of the major clans, value straightforward combat and might simply kill most prisoners or work them to death quickly. The Evil Sons, obsessed with speed, might use human prisoners as expendable crew for their ramshackle vehicles. The Bad Moons, the richest of the Orc clans, might trade prisoners or use them for ostentatious displays of wealth. The Death Skulls, legendary looters, might keep humans alive specifically to maintain or operate salvaged Imperial equipment. The Blood Axes, closest thing Orcs have to tactical thinkers, might actually attempt to extract information or use prisoners strategically. And the Snakebites, primitives who distrust technology, might use humans for primitive blood sports or ritual combat. All of this paints a picture of captors who are simultaneously simple and complex. Simple in that they want only to fight and find joy in violence. Complex in that their alien psychology, their psychic gestalt field, and their engineered biology create behavior patterns that defy easy human understanding. For a captured Commissar, this means facing an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, negotiated with, or appealed to through shared humanity. The Orcs do not care about your suffering except as entertainment. They do not recognize your authority or your rank. They do not respect the symbols that once protected you. You are simply a resource to be exploited until you are no longer useful, at which point you become food. The immediate aftermath of capture. The moment a Commissar falls into Orc hands is a watershed in their existence, marking a transition from hunter to prey, from authority to powerlessness. Understanding this moment requires us to examine the contexts in which such captures occur and the immediate violence that follows. Commissars do not typically surrender. This is important to understand. The entire philosophy of the Officio Prefectus emphasizes that a Commissar's duty is to maintain morale and discipline, even unto death. Surrender represents the ultimate failure of that duty, a betrayal of everything a Commissar is supposed to embody. Therefore, most captured Commissars are taken not through willing surrender, but through circumstances that remove choice from the equation entirely. The most common scenario involves overwhelming force. An Orc Warg crashes over an Imperial defensive position like a green tide. Thousands upon thousands of howling greenskins, overwhelming firepower through sheer numbers. In such chaos, even the most resolute Commissar can find themselves cut off, surrounded, beaten down by the sheer weight of the assault. Perhaps their bolt pistol runs dry at the crucial moment. Perhaps a power claw tears the chainsword from their hands. Perhaps they are simply buried under a pile of roaring Orcs, their peaked cap knocked askew, their greatcoat torn, their authority rendered meaningless by the basic physics of being outnumbered 100 to 1. Another scenario involves treachery or tactical brilliance on the Orc side. The Blood Axes, in particular, are known for actual tactics and strategy that would make even veteran Imperial commanders wary. Ambushes, false retreats, flanking maneuvers. These are not typical Orc behavior, but the Blood Axes prove that some greenskins can learn. A Commissar leading a counterattack might find themselves walking into a carefully prepared trap, with the escape routes sealed and overwhelming force deployed at precisely the wrong moment. Sometimes, capture results from injury severe enough to incapacitate but not kill. A badly placed artillery shell, a lucky shot from an Orc big shooter, a glancing blow from a chopper that concusses rather than decapitates. The Commissar goes down, stunned or wounded, and the green tide washes over them before they can recover. By the time consciousness returns, rough hands are already dragging them away from the battlefield. The immediate physical treatment is brutal and degrading. Orcs are not gentle creatures, and they have no concept of treating prisoners with care. The captured Commissar is likely grabbed, punched, kicked, and generally manhandled. Orcs are immensely strong, casually capable of feats that would require enhancement for humans to match. What an Orc considers a gentle shove can send a human flying. What an Orc views as mild roughhousing can crack ribs or dislocate shoulders. The stripping of equipment and uniform follows quickly. This is both practical and symbolic. Orks love loot, and Imperial equipment represents valuable plunder. The Commissar's bolt pistol, their chainsword or power weapon, their peaked cap, their greatcoat with its insignia of rank and loyalty, all of it is torn away. Orks fight amongst themselves for the best bits. An Ork nob might claim the bolt pistol, testing its weight and laughing as he fires rounds into the air. Another Ork might try on the greatcoat, which would look absurdly small on even the smallest green skin, before discarding it or tearing it apart for materials. The peaked cap might end up stuck on some Ork's head at a jaunty angle, a mockery of what it once represented. This stripping serves purposes beyond loot collection. For the Commissar, it represents a profound psychological blow. These items are not just equipment, but symbols of identity and authority. The bolt pistol granted the power of life and death over Imperial guardsmen. The chainsword represented the right to lead from the front. The peaked cap and greatcoat marked them as agents of the Emperor's will. Without these items, the Commissar is rendered indistinguishable from any other captured human, their authority meaningless, their identity stripped away along with their uniform. Some Orks, particularly those who have fought Imperial forces many times, understand on some level that they are desecrating symbols of authority. They might take particular joy in this, parading around with the Commissar's cap perched on their head, mocking the very concept of human hierarchy. For an Ork, such mockery serves to reinforce their own cultural belief that might makes right. The human thought these symbols meant something, but clearly they didn't mean enough to prevent capture. The immediate aftermath also often includes beatings, not necessarily motivated by cruelty in the human sense, but by casual violence and the Ork tendency to express dominance through physical force. An Ork might punch the captured Commissar simply to establish who is stronger. Another might kick them for laughs, finding it amusing how easily the human goes down. These beatings serve to drive home the new reality. The Commissar is no longer in control, no longer protected by rank or uniform, no longer anything more than another piece of defeated prey. During this period, the Commissar also confronts the deaths of those around them. The Ork assault that led to their capture likely killed many of the guardsmen they were commanding. Bodies litter the battlefield, some torn apart by Ork choppers, others trampled under crude boots, still more riddled with bullets from shooter fire. The Commissar, who may have executed soldiers for cowardice hours before, now bears witness to the results of courage that wasn't quite enough. The soldiers who stood and fought are just as dead as any who might have fled. This confrontation with mass death serves as a stark reminder of Imperial doctrine's limitations. A Commissar maintains discipline through the threat of execution, operating on the principle that soldiers fear the Commissar's bolt pistol more than the enemy. But here lies the proof that courage alone, discipline alone, is sometimes insufficient against the green tide. And now the Commissar, who enforced that discipline, is among the defeated, their authority revealed as contingent on circumstances rather than absolute. Transportation away from the battlefield typically comes next. Orks are not known for careful prisoner handling. Captured humans might be thrown into the back of crude Ork trucks, piled atop each other with no regard for comfort or safety. The vehicles themselves are ramshackle contraptions that by all rights should not function, held together by Ork belief and the Warhammer field, as much as by actual engineering. The ride is rough, violent, and terrifying, with every pothole and sharp turn threatening to send prisoners tumbling out or crushing them against the metal walls. Alternatively, prisoners might simply be forced to march. Orks can cover impressive distances on foot, their endurance matching their strength. Humans cannot match this pace, especially humans already wounded or exhausted from battle. Those who fall behind are kicked, beaten, or simply left to die. The Commissar, trained to endure hardship and maintain discipline, might fare better than common guardsmen, but the gulf between human and Ork endurance remains vast. During transport, the Commissar faces another psychological horror, witnessing the treatment of other prisoners. Orks are casual in their cruelty, treating captured humans with the same care one might afford captured vermin. Random violence erupts without warning. An orc might grab a prisoner and simply tear them apart, laughing at the screams. Another might use a prisoner for target practice, seeing how many shots it takes to finally kill the struggling human. A third might get hungry and simply start eating a prisoner alive, gnawing on limbs while the victim still screams. For a commissar, trained to maintain order and discipline, forced to watch such horrors without power to intervene or protect, the psychological impact can be devastating. This is the nightmare beneath the nightmare, not just facing death or torture yourself, but being forced to witness it inflicted on those you were supposed to lead and protect, rendered powerless to do anything but survive. The immediate aftermath period, from capture through initial transport to wherever the orcs are taking their prisoners, typically lasts hours at most. But those hours can feel like an eternity. Each minute, a fresh assault on the commissar's sense of self and purpose. The symbols of authority are gone. The weapons are gone. The soldiers they commanded are dead or scattered. What remains is simply a human being, stripped of rank and power, at the mercy of creatures who understand neither mercy nor the value of human life beyond entertainment and utility. Slavery and forced labor. Once past the initial shock of capture, prisoners enter what might be called the utility phase of orc captivity. During this period, the orcs keep humans alive because they can be useful, primarily as slaves for various labor-intensive tasks that the greenskins find tedious or beneath them. For a captured commissar, this represents a fall from the heights of imperial authority to literally the lowest rung of orc society. Useful animals, nothing more. The conditions of orc slave camps defy adequate description. These are not organized facilities with systematic procedures and oversight. They are chaotic, brutal concentrations of captured humans, loosely guarded by orcs, who view their charges as somewhere between livestock and toys. The camps lack basic sanitation, structured food distribution, or medical care. Humans are simply penned up when not working, like livestock awaiting the next use. Shelter, to the extent it exists at all, consists of whatever the prisoners can cobble together from scraps the orcs don't want. Bits of metal, torn fabric, sometimes the bodies of the recently dead positioned as windbreaks. These become the raw materials of survival. The orcs don't provide shelter because they don't need it themselves. An orc can sleep on bare ground in freezing rain and wake up refreshed. They genuinely don't understand why humans might need protection from the elements, and they certainly don't care enough to provide it. Food comes irregularly and in forms that test human endurance. Orcs eat almost anything, and their digestive systems can handle materials that would kill humans. They feed their prisoners what they themselves would eat: half-rotted squig meat, fungal growths scraped from the walls of their settlements, sometimes bits of previous prisoners. The portions are never sufficient to maintain proper health, merely enough to keep the slaves alive and capable of work. Starvation is a constant companion, a gnawing presence that never quite goes away. Water presents its own challenges. Orcs are not particular about water quality, and they assume their prisoners aren't either. Water sources in orc camps are often contaminated, sometimes with industrial runoff from crude orc manufacturing, sometimes with biological waste, sometimes with substances that have no name in any human language. Prisoners must choose between dehydration and drinking water that might cause illness, a choice that is really no choice at all. The work itself varies depending on the orc settlement's current needs and the whims of whatever war boss or nob is in charge. Common tasks include construction work, hauling materials, digging trenches or fortifications, sorting through salvage and scrap, and maintaining the endless stream of ramshackle vehicles and equipment that orcs require for their constant warfare. Construction projects in orc camps operate on a scale and philosophy foreign to human understanding. Orcs build big, crude, and fast. A project might involve erecting a massive effigy to Gork or Mork, the orc gods, from scrap metal and debris. Human slaves haul the materials, position the pieces, and do the dangerous work of welding and riveting, while orcs supervise with characteristic impatience. Falls are common. Burns from crude welding equipment are universal. Crushed limbs from falling debris happen daily. The orcs don't care. Injured slaves who can't work are left to die or are eaten. Some slaves are assigned to the mech boys, the orc engineers and tinkerers, who create the ramshackle war machines that somehow function. This work is particularly dangerous because orc technology is fundamentally unstable. Weapons misfire, engines explode, vehicles collapse mid-assembly. The mech boys don't worry about this because orcs are tough enough to survive such incidents most of the time. Humans are not. A slave working on an orc vehicle might be crushed when the suspension gives way, burned when the engine spontaneously ignites, or simply torn apart when a weapon they're loading accidentally fires. Other slaves end up in what passes for orc agriculture. The greenskins cultivate fungus of various types for food, and this cultivation requires maintenance that the orcs find boring. Slaves tend the fungus gardens, harvest squigs, and manage the grotesque ecosystem that orcoid species create wherever they go. This work is slightly less immediately dangerous than construction or mechanical work, but it comes with its own horrors. The fungal spores can cause infections in human lungs. The squigs, though small, are vicious when cornered. The Gretchen overseers are cruel in ways that mimic their orc masters. For a commissar specifically, this forced labor represents a complete inversion of their former existence. These are individuals trained from childhood to command, to inspire through presence and authority, to stand as symbols of imperial will. Now they are reduced to hauling scrap metal, sorting through garbage, or holding pieces of an orc vehicle in place while a mech hammers it together. Every task is a reminder of fallen status. Every order from an orc, or even a Gretchen, a fresh humiliation. The social dynamics among prisoners add another layer of complexity to the horror. In theory, prisoners might organize, might work together for mutual survival and support. In practice, starvation, exhaustion, and constant fear create an environment where solidarity fractures. Prisoners sometimes turn on each other, fighting over scraps of food, attempting to curry favor with orc guards by betraying fellow humans, or simply succumbing to the despair that whispers, it's every person for themselves. Some prisoners attempt to maintain vestiges of imperial identity and hierarchy. Former soldiers might still defer to officers, even stripped of rank insignia. Officers might try to organize work details for maximum efficiency, attempting to impose order on the chaos of orc slavery. A captured commissar might still try to maintain discipline, to remind fellow prisoners of their duty to the emperor, to enforce some semblance of structure. But these attempts often fail in the face of overwhelming degradation. What authority does a commissar have when they can't execute? Insubordination, when their own survival depends on orc whims, when every day brings fresh proof that the emperor either cannot or will not save them. The bolt pistol that enforced discipline is gone. The peaked cap that symbolized authority is gone. What remains is just another starving, beaten human trying to survive another day of slavery. Some prisoners break psychologically, descending into catatonia or madness. They stop eating, stop working, simply give up. The orcs show no more patience with such prisoners than with injured ones who cannot work. They are killed, eaten, or left to die as their usefulness evaporates. For other prisoners, witnessing these psychological breakdowns serves as both warning and temptation. The temptation to simply stop fighting, to let go, to embrace the end can be overwhelming when each day brings only suffering, with no hope of relief. The orcs themselves show varying degrees of attention to their slaves. Some orcs barely notice the humans, viewing them as mobile tools that require occasional feeding. Others take more active interest, using prisoners for casual entertainment or simple cruelty. An orc might grab a slave at random and beat them for laughs. Another might pit two prisoners against each other in improvised fights. laughing at their feeble attempts to harm each other. A third might use prisoners for target practice, seeing how close they can shoot without actually hitting, or sometimes not caring if they hit. Night in the slave camps brings no relief. If anything, the darkness makes things worse. Ork guards become less attentive as they focus on their own activities, drinking fungus beer, fighting amongst themselves, or simply sleeping. This inattention means prisoners receive no food or water during these hours. It also means that orcs who decide they want entertainment or relief for violent urges might wander into the prisoner pens, selecting victims at random for whatever cruel impulse strikes them. Disease runs rampant through prisoner populations. Wounds go untreated and become infected. Malnutrition weakens immune systems. Close quarters and lack of sanitation allow sickness to spread unchecked. Orcs are largely immune to disease thanks to their robust constitutions, so they make no effort to prevent outbreaks among prisoners. Why would they care if human slaves get sick? There are always more humans to capture. Death from overwork is common. The orcs push their slaves until they collapse, then discard them when they cannot rise. There is no concept of reasonable workload, no understanding that humans require rest and recovery. An orc can work for days without sleep if properly motivated. Humans cannot, but the orcs don't adjust their expectations to account for this weakness. Work until you drop, and when you drop, you're done being useful. For commissars enduring this nightmare, the challenge becomes maintaining some core of identity, some thread of purpose that prevents complete psychological dissolution. Some focus on survival itself as a form of duty. You cannot serve the emperor if you're dead, so staying alive becomes an act of faith. Others cling to hope of rescue or escape, telling themselves that they must endure long enough for an imperial counterattack to free them. Still others find purpose in helping fellow prisoners, using whatever authority or respect their former rank carries to organize, encourage, and protect where possible. But the corrosive effects of slavery are undeniable. Each day chips away at the person who was captured. The Commissar who entered Ork captivity might have been a proud symbol of imperial authority, confident in the righteousness of their cause and their role as the emperor's servant. After weeks or months of slavery, of starvation and beatings and endless degrading labor, what remains? How much of that pride survives when you've been reduced to a beast of burden? How much faith endures when prayers seem to go unanswered, and each day brings fresh evidence that the emperor is either distant or indifferent to your suffering? Entertainment and the fighting pits. Beyond simple labor exploitation, orcs use their prisoners for entertainment, and nowhere is this more evident than in the fighting pits. These crude arenas represent perhaps the most grotesque fusion of orc psychology and human suffering, places where the greenskins' love of violence transforms captured humans into gladiators for their amusement. The concept of fighting pits aligns perfectly with orc culture. Orcs love a good scrap, and while they prefer to do the fighting themselves, watching others fight provides entertainment when personal combat isn't available. For orcs gathering between battles, during lulls in their endless campaigning, or simply when they're bored, forcing prisoners to fight offers both amusement and a way to gamble, as orcs will bet on anything involving violence. The pits themselves vary in sophistication based on how long the orc settlement has been established. Newly established war camps might have nothing more than a cleared circle of dirt, hastily marked boundaries, and orcs gathered around in a loose mob. More established settlements, particularly those that have existed for months or years, might develop actual arena structures, crude amphitheaters made from scrap metal and salvaged materials, with raised seating for important nobs and their retinues, and deeper pits where the actual fighting occurs. The fights themselves fall into several categories, each with its own particular horrors. The most straightforward involves prisoner versus prisoner combat. Two humans are thrown into the pit, given crude weapons, sometimes actual weapons like knives or clubs, sometimes just sharpened pieces of scrap metal, and told to fight. The winner lives to fight another day, the loser dies. Simple, brutal, effective entertainment for the orc audience. For the humans involved, this represents an impossible moral situation. These might be fellow soldiers, people who fought side by side against the orcs just days or weeks before. Now they're forced to kill each other for orc amusement. Some refuse, standing defiant in the face of death. The orcs find this briefly amusing, then simply kill both combatants and bring out fresh contestants. Others fight but without real commitment, pulling their blows or attempting to make the fight last without causing serious injury. This tactic sometimes works if the orcs are drunk or distracted, but a perceptive knob will notice the deception and punish both fighters. Many prisoners simply fight to survive, faced with certain death if they refuse and possible death if they fight. They choose the option that at least offers a chance. The psychological weight of killing a fellow human, potentially a fellow soldier or even a friend, for orc entertainment is crushing, but the alternative is death without even the dignity of resistance. Some prisoners justify their actions through various mental constructs. The Emperor demands survival so you can fight again. Your opponent would do the same to you. At least one of you survives to potentially escape and warn the Imperium. None of these justifications fully erase the horror of what they're being forced to do. The second category involves humans fighting various creatures. Orcs have access to a menagerie of dangerous fauna, from vicious squigs to exotic beasts captured during their travels. Throwing a prisoner into a pit with a hungry squig or aggressive alien predator provides the orcs with entertainment that doesn't require any cooperation from the prisoner. They'll fight whether they want to or not, driven by survival instinct, if nothing else. These beast fights are even more hopeless than human versus human combat. A squig, despite its small size, is a ball of teeth, muscle, and aggression. Its jaws can tear through flesh with ease, and it fights with an animal cunning that humans struggle to match. Larger beasts are worse still. Some orc settlements maintain exotic creatures specifically for these arena fights. Things like Katakan devils, ambul, or even young tyrannid organisms if the orcs have fought against the hive fleets recently. Prisoners thrown into beast fights rarely survive. Those who do often suffer horrific injuries that go untreated, turning minor wounds into fatal infections. But the orcs don't care about prisoner survival rates. There are always more humans to capture, always more entertainment to be had. A prisoner who kills a beast in the arena gains brief notoriety among their fellow prisoners, but also marks themselves for more dangerous future contests. The third category, and perhaps most horrifying, involves what the orcs call special matches. These might pit multiple prisoners against a single, well-armed opponent, force prisoners to fight while wounded or restrained, or introduce cruel variations designed to maximize suffering and spectacle. Orcs have been known to force prisoners to fight while chained together, to battle while standing on increasingly narrow platforms over spiked pits, or to face opponents armed with weapons while they themselves are given nothing but their bare hands. Commissars thrown into fighting pits face unique circumstances. Their training gives them advantages over ordinary guardsmen. They know how to fight, how to kill efficiently, and how to maintain focus under extreme stress. But this same training also makes them valuable entertainment. An orc who has seen a commissar fight might specifically request that particular prisoner for arena combat, wanting to see if the human leader is as dangerous unarmed as they were with their bolt pistol and chainsword. There's also a psychological dimension specific to commissars. These are individuals who have executed their own soldiers for cowardice, who have enforced discipline through the threat of death. Now they find themselves forced to kill fellow humans, not as punishment for failure, but purely as entertainment for Xenos. The irony is not lost on the commissar, or on other prisoners who might remember the commissar's former authority. Some commissars attempt to maintain their identity, even in the pits. They might try to make their kills quick and merciful, minimizing their opponent's suffering. They might offer prayers to the Emperor before each fight, maintaining the forms of faith even in these degraded circumstances. They might refuse to show fear or pain, standing defiant before the Orc crowd in a final assertion of human dignity. These gestures are small and ultimately meaningless to the Orcs, but they can be crucial for maintaining the Commissar's sense of self. Other Commissars break differently. The disconnect between their training and their circumstances becomes too much to bear. How does one maintain faith in the Emperor when reduced to gladiatorial combat for alien amusement? How does one preserve belief in human superiority when forced to fight like an animal? Some resolve this through hatred, channeling all their emotions into pure rage at the Orcs, and using that fury to fuel their fighting. Others retreat into a kind of mechanical detachment, fighting because that's what the situation requires, but divorcing their actions from any emotional or moral framework. The Orc audience itself adds another dimension to the horror. Hundreds or even thousands of greenskins might gather around a large fighting pit, roaring their approval at good fights, jeering at displays of cowardice or incompetence. They place bets using teeth, the Orc currency, gambling on fight outcomes with the same enthusiasm they bring to everything involving violence. When a particularly brutal kill occurs, the crowd erupts in approval. When a fight disappoints, they might demand the immediate execution of both participants. Occasionally, a prisoner becomes a successful enough fighter to gain a reputation. This is not a blessing, but a curse. The Orc crowd begins to recognize them, to demand their appearance in more fights. The challenges become increasingly difficult as the Orcs seek to find the limit of the prisoner's capabilities. Eventually, every pit fighter meets their match, whether against a superior opponent, a particularly vicious beast, or simply exhaustion and accumulated injuries catching up with them. Some prisoners attempt to use the fighting pits as opportunities for escape. During the chaos of combat, with Orc attention focused on the spectacle, a clever prisoner might spot a gap in security or a moment of inattention that could be exploited. But such attempts almost always fail. Orcs might not be strategically sophisticated, but they understand physical security well enough to prevent escapes from their entertainment venues. The few who try are usually caught quickly, and their punishment serves as object lessons to other prisoners about the futility of escape. The psychological toll of repeated arena combat cannot be overstated. Each fight leaves marks beyond the physical, nightmares, intrusive memories, the faces of those you've killed haunting your sleep. For humans forced to kill each other for entertainment, the guilt accumulates like poison. Some prisoners lose themselves in this, becoming exactly what the Orcs want them to be: violent, desperate creatures who fight purely to survive another day. The humanity that once defined them erodes with each bout, until what remains is more animal than man. For Commissars specifically, the pits represent the ultimate test of whatever made them Commissars in the first place. Can you maintain discipline when you're the one being forced to fight? Can you preserve faith when the Emperor seems absent and your prayers go unanswered? Can you remember your oath of service when that service has been reduced to killing fellow humans for the amusement of Xenos? These are questions without good answers, and each Commissar must find their own way through the moral labyrinth the pits create. The Commissar's unique position among the prisoners taken by Orcs. Commissars occupy a peculiar position that can work both for and against their survival. Understanding this requires examining how Orcs perceive human hierarchy, what makes a Commissar distinctive to greenskin eyes, and how different Orcs might respond to capturing such a prize. The Orcs, despite their brutish appearance and crude culture, are not entirely blind to human social structures. They understand on a fundamental level that some humans give orders and others follow them. This understanding stems partly from their own might makes right hierarchy, and partly from practical observation during countless battles. An Ork warboss can look at an Imperial battle line and identify who's in charge based on who stands in the back giving orders, who the other humans defer to, and who seems to direct the fighting rather than just participating in it. Commissars are particularly distinctive in this regard. Their uniform, when they still have it, marks them out immediately. The peaked cap, the greatcoat, the obvious authority they wield. These are signs even the dimmest Ork boy can recognize. More importantly, Commissars often position themselves prominently on the battlefield, leading charges or standing at crucial points to maintain discipline. This visibility makes them obvious targets and also obvious prizes when they fall. The perceived value of a captured Commissar varies among different Orks. For the average Ork boy, a Commissar is just another human, perhaps worth a bit more loot if their equipment is particularly fancy. But for Orks, who have fought Imperial forces extensively, who have seen Commissars in action, who understand that these humans represent something more than common soldiers, the capture takes on greater significance. An Ork nob who has watched a Commissar execute fleeing guardsmen might develop a grudging respect for the human's willingness to kill their own. Orks understand strength and ruthlessness, and a Commissar executing a coward displays both. This doesn't make the Ork like the Commissar, but it might make them view the captured officer as more worthy of attention than a common prisoner. Instead of being immediately killed or sent to slave labor, such a Commissar might be kept for special purposes, as a trophy, as entertainment, or as a test subject for particularly cruel amusements. Warbosses and high-ranking Orks sometimes take a more strategic view. A captured Commissar represents proof of victory, a symbol that can be displayed to demonstrate the warboss's prowess in battle. This is particularly true if the Commissar had a reputation, if their name was known among the Orks who fought them. Ghazghkull's treatment of Yarrick exemplifies this. The warlord didn't just capture a Commissar. He captured the Commissar, the human who had become synonymous with resistance to his first Armageddon assault. The symbolic value extends beyond simple trophy-taking. In Ork culture, stories and legends matter. A warboss who can tell the story of how he captured a famous Commissar, who can point to that prisoner as proof of the story's truth, gains status among other Orks. This creates a perverse incentive to keep certain Commissars alive longer than they might otherwise survive, not out of mercy, but because their continued existence serves the captor's reputation. For the Commissar themselves, this elevated status is a double-edged sword. On one hand, being viewed as a prize rather than just another prisoner might mean better treatment, more food to keep them healthy-looking, less brutal work assignments to preserve their value as a trophy, perhaps even medical attention to keep them alive longer. Ghazghkull had Yarrick's injuries treated and his bionics restored, not out of kindness, but because a broken and dying Yarrick wasn't as impressive a prize as one in fighting condition. On the other hand, this special status draws attention, and attention from Orks is rarely beneficial to human prisoners. A Commissar designated as a special prisoner might find themselves subjected to psychological torture designed to break their spirit. Orks might force them to watch the execution of other prisoners, to participate in degrading activities, or to serve as living symbols of Imperial defeat. The goal is not just to keep the Commissar alive, but to humiliate them, to demonstrate that all their authority and pride meant nothing in the face of Ork superiority. The relationship between captor and Commissar can become bizarrely personal in some cases. When an Ork has fought against a particular Commissar multiple times, has seen that human on the battlefield in various engagements, has maybe even been wounded by that Commissar's weapons, a kind of familiarity develops. Not friendship, Orks don't do friendship in the human sense, but recognition. The Commissar stops being just another human and becomes a specific opponent with a history. This dynamic reaches its peak in the documented relationship between Ghazghkull Thraka and Sebastian Yarrick. These two have clashed across decades, on Armageddon and beyond. Ghazghkull literally released Yarrick from captivity because, in the warlord's own words, the next fight would be more fun with Yarrick on the other side. This is incomprehensible from a human strategic perspective. You don't release enemy commanders because future battles will be more entertaining. But from the Orc perspective, it makes perfect sense. What's the point of winning if the fight isn't good? This concept of scumgrod, which we touched on earlier, deserves deeper exploration in the context of Commissars. For an Orc, particularly a powerful one like a war boss, having a worthy opponent is actually valuable. It validates the Orc's own strength. You're only as impressive as the enemies you defeat, after all. A Commissar who has killed many Orcs, who has thwarted Orc attacks, who has displayed the kind of stubborn determination that Orcs themselves value, becomes a trophy worth preserving. The psychology of a Commissar navigating this situation is complex. On one hand, being recognized and valued by the enemy might offer survival advantages. Playing into the Orc's desire for a worthy opponent, maintaining dignity and defiance, refusing to break. These behaviors might actually prolong survival because they maintain the Commissar's value as a prize. On the other hand, such performance requires maintaining a persona under extreme duress, essentially living a role for the sake of survival. Some Commissars might find this deeply offensive to their sense of duty. They are not entertainers or trophy pieces, but servants of the Emperor. The idea of modulating behavior to appeal to Orc psychology could feel like betraying their purpose. Others might view it as tactical necessity. If playing the part of the unbreakable Imperial hero keeps you alive long enough to escape or be rescued, isn't that serving the Emperor more effectively than dying in a pointless gesture? There's also the question of how other prisoners view a Commissar who receives special treatment. Resentment is natural and understandable. Why should the Commissar get better rations when everyone's starving? Why is the Commissar protected from the worst labor when everyone else suffers? The fact that this special treatment comes at the cost of being a trophy and enduring unique psychological torments might not be apparent to other prisoners who only see the surface advantages. A Commissar aware of this dynamic faces difficult choices. Do you use whatever privilege your status affords to help other prisoners, potentially drawing Orc attention to yourself and losing your protected position? Do you maintain distance, preserving the special status that might eventually enable escape or rescue? Do you try to organize resistance, using your authority among human prisoners, even as you lack authority over your Orc captors? There are no clear right answers, and the decisions made in these impossible circumstances can haunt a Commissar for the rest of their life. The unique position of captured Commissars also creates opportunities for manipulation and games that Orcs might find entertaining. A particularly clever Orc might force a Commissar to give orders to other prisoners, maintaining the forms of authority in a context where that authority is completely hollow. Or they might make the Commissar watch as other prisoners are punished or killed, using the Commissar's impotence as a form of torture. The goal is to demonstrate that all the Commissar's power was illusory, dependent on Imperial structures that mean nothing in Orc captivity. For some Commissars, this treatment breaks them more effectively than any physical torture could. The entire foundation of their identity rests on authority and purpose. Strip those away, demonstrate their meaninglessness, and you've destroyed the person more thoroughly than mere death could accomplish. Others find new purpose in resistance itself. If the Orcs want to break them, then refusing to break becomes its own form of service to the Emperor. Yarrick's capture, a case study. The capture and captivity of Commissar Sebastian Yarrick by warboss Gazgkul Mag Uruk. Thraka represents the most thoroughly documented case of what befalls a high-ranking Imperial officer in Orc hands. Examining this case provides invaluable insights into the broader question of Commissar captivity, while also illustrating the unique dynamics that can emerge when captor and captive are both exceptional individuals. The context of Yarrick's capture is crucial to understanding what followed. This was not the first encounter between Yarrick and Gazgkul. The two had faced each other during the Second War for Armageddon, where Yarrick's defense of Hades' hive had become legendary. Gazgkul knew who Yarrick was, understood his capabilities, and had developed what might charitably be called professional respect for the human who had thwarted his first attempt to conquer Armageddon. When Ghazghkull returned to the region after the Second War's conclusion, Yarrick pursued him to the planet Golgotha. What should have been an Imperial victory turned into a trap. Ghazghkull demonstrated tactical cunning that caught Yarrick off guard, using a false engagement to draw Imperial forces into a kill zone, while a second Ork force attacked from behind. The trap was so well executed that even Yarrick's considerable experience and tactical acumen couldn't save the situation. The battle that led to Yarrick's capture was brutal and one-sided. Imperial forces were surrounded and systematically destroyed. Yarrick fought to the last, as befits a Commissar, but sheer numbers and tactical disadvantage overwhelmed even his formidable will. When he finally fell, wounded and exhausted, Ghazghkull himself was there to witness the capture of his greatest adversary. The immediate aftermath differed significantly from what typically befalls captured humans. Yarrick was not simply thrown in with other prisoners or executed on the spot. Ghazghkull had specific plans for the Commissar, plans that required keeping him alive and relatively intact. Yarrick was transported to Ghazghkull's Space Hulk, a massive conglomeration of fused spacecraft serving as the warlord's mobile fortress and base of operations. Upon regaining consciousness, Yarrick found himself in an environment that encapsulated everything horrifying about Ork captivity, while also revealing the twisted respect his captor held for him. He had been stripped of his most distinctive bionics, the infamous Bale Eye laser weapon that had replaced his lost eye, and the power claw he had torn from a dead Ork and claimed as his own. These items represented Yarrick's identity as much as any uniform or rank insignia. Their removal was both practical, preventing him from using them as weapons, and symbolic, stripping away the things that made him the legendary Old Bale Eye. Ghazghkull's first test of Yarrick demonstrated the warlord's cruel sense of humor and his desire to prove the human's legendary status. Yarrick was suspended in chains above a waste chute, a pit leading down into the bowels of the Space Hulk. With Ghazghkull watching, Yarrick was dropped down the chute, tumbling through darkness into what should have been his death, or at least severe injury. Instead, Yarrick demonstrated the determination that had made him legendary. He survived the fall, landing among refuse and squig-infested waste. For days, he hunted the vicious creatures, using their massive quills as improvised tools to build a crude ladder. Step by painful step, he climbed back up the waste chute, driven by sheer stubborn refusal to die in such an undignified manner. When Yarrick finally emerged, battered but alive, Ghazghkull was waiting. The warlord had known, or perhaps simply believed with Orkish certainty, that Yarrick would survive and return. This was the test Ghazghkull wanted to see passed, proof that the human's reputation was earned rather than exaggerated. Satisfied, Ghazghkull ordered Yarrick thrown in with the other human prisoners, the actual captivity beginning in earnest. The prisoner population aboard the Space Hulk consisted of humans captured during various Ork raids and battles. These were Imperial guardsmen, ship crew, civilian captives, all reduced to slave labor serving the Space Hulk's constant need for maintenance and expansion. Yarrick's arrival created ripples through this population. Many recognized him by reputation, if not by sight. Here was the hero of Hades' hive, the man who had stood against Ghazghkull himself, now reduced to slavery alongside common prisoners. Yarrick quickly assessed the situation with the tactical mind that had made him such a formidable commander. The prisoners were disorganized, demoralized, scattered across various work details with little coordination between groups. The Orks used them haphazardly, sending work crews wherever needed without systematic oversight. This lack of organization represented both a vulnerability and an opportunity. Drawing on his authority and reputation, Yarrick began organizing the prisoners. Not openly or obviously, that would have drawn Ork attention, but through quiet conversations, careful positioning of reliable prisoners in key work crews, and gradual establishment of communication networks. The goal was twofold. First, to improve prisoner survival rates through better mutual support and coordination. Second, to gather intelligence about the Space Hulk's layout and systems that might enable escape. The work crews, forced to perform maintenance and construction throughout the massive Space Hulk, inadvertently became mapping parties. Prisoners compared notes about where they had worked, what they had seen, slowly building a mental picture of the Hulk's vast and chaotic structure. This intelligence gathering was dangerous. Orks who caught prisoners apparently communicating without work-related purpose might beat or kill them, but it was also essential for any escape plan. During this period, Yarrick experienced the full degradation of Ork captivity. He hauled scrap metal alongside former guardsmen who had once snapped to attention at his approach. He sorted through refuse, while Gretchen overseers mocked him. He witnessed fellow prisoners beaten to death for minor infractions or simple Ork amusement. Every indignity, every humiliation was a test of his ability to maintain identity and purpose in the face of comprehensive dehumanization. The psychological warfare was subtle, but effective. Gazgakul clearly wanted Yarrick alive, but also wanted him broken, wanted to prove that even the great hero of Armageddon was just another human when stripped of his symbols and authority. Periodically, Yarrick would be summoned to appear before the warlord, forced to stand. In Gazkul's presence while the Ork conducted business or entertained other Orks, the message was clear. You are my trophy, my proof of victory, and I display you as I wish. But Yarrick refused to break. He maintained discipline among the prisoners he could influence. He continued gathering intelligence. He began formulating an escape plan, however desperate it might be. The other prisoners drew strength from his example. If the legendary Commissar hadn't given up, how could they? The escape attempt, when it finally came, was born of opportunity and desperation in equal measure. One of the work gangs Yarrick had organized managed to sabotage a large ammunition dump, creating a massive explosion and subsequent chaos. In the confusion, Yarrick and a dozen other prisoners made their move, attempting to reach a spacecraft they had identified during their intelligence gathering. The escape plan failed at multiple stages. The intended spacecraft was being customized by Ork mech boys, rendered useless for their purposes. The diversionary explosion, while spectacular, drew more Ork attention than anticipated. One by one, the escaping prisoners were caught or forced to sacrifice themselves so others could continue. By the time Yarrick reached the spacecraft, every other prisoner in the escape party had died, and the vessel itself was a death trap. Faced with certain discovery, the pilot among them made the ultimate sacrifice, starting the partially rebuilt spacecraft's engines despite knowing it would explode. The resulting blast provided the final diversion Yarrick needed, but also cut off his escape route. With no other options, he made for the one place he believed Gazkul would be, the Space Hulk's command center, a structure shaped like a massive Ork head. The journey to the command center was a gauntlet of Ork-infested corridors and deadly obstacles. Every step of the way, more prisoners sacrificed themselves to give Yarrick a chance to reach his goal. These weren't just tactical sacrifices, but acts of faith. Faith that Yarrick represented something worth dying for, that his survival and potential success mattered more than their individual lives. When Yarrick finally reached the command center, he found not Gazkul, but several mechs operating the Space Hulk's controls. With efficiency born of desperate fury, he dispatched them and took temporary control of the command center. But this victory was hollow and temporary. Without a ship, without support, alone on a Space Hulk full of Orks, he had nowhere to go and no way to escape. It was then that Gazkul appeared, not angry but almost pleased. The warlord had anticipated Yarrick's escape attempt, had perhaps even allowed it to happen. In Gazkul's alien psychology, Yarrick's desperate struggle to escape was evidence of the fighting spirit that made him a worthy opponent. An enemy who gave up, who accepted captivity meekly, would be worthless. But an enemy who fought every step of the way, who inspired others to sacrifice themselves for his cause, who refused to surrender even in the most hopeless circumstances. That was an enemy worthy of the great Gazg-Kul Thraka. What happened next defied all human logic and military sense. Gazg-Kul, having recaptured Yarrick, having the Commissar at his mercy with no possible escape, simply let him go. Not in the sense of opening the doors and waving goodbye, but in the calculated release of a dangerous animal that will provide future entertainment. Gazg-Kul had Yarrick's injuries treated, had his bionics restored, and had him placed in a shuttlecraft with coordinates for the nearest Imperial world. From Gazg-Kul's perspective, this made perfect sense. He was planning his return to Armageddon, the third war that would surpass the second. That war would be more entertaining, more challenging, more satisfying if Yarrick was on the other side. Killing the Commissar now would eliminate a future source of excellent fighting. Releasing him meant ensuring that when Gazg-Kul returned to Armageddon, his favorite opponent would be there to face him. Yarrick's reaction to this release was telling. Rather than gratitude or relief, he felt disturbed and unsettled. Being kept alive by Ork mercy, having his bionics restored by Ork mech boys, being released because an Ork warlord found him entertaining, all of this was more psychologically jarring than straightforward torture would have been. It demonstrated that Gazg-Kul understood human psychology well enough to know how disturbing this treatment would be, added another layer to their complex relationship. The aftermath of Yarrick's captivity shaped both his subsequent actions and the broader Imperial understanding of Ork psychology. Yarrick returned to Imperial service with intimate knowledge of Ork capabilities and thinking. His experiences during captivity, the intelligence he gathered, and the insights into Gazg-Kul's mind all became valuable assets. When Gazg-Kul did return to Armageddon, Yarrick was indeed there to oppose him, their rivalry continuing across decades and countless battles. But the experience left marks beyond the tactical. Yarrick had witnessed the deaths of dozens of prisoners who sacrificed themselves for his escape attempt. He had endured weeks of degradation and slavery. He had been forced to acknowledge that his survival depended partly on an Ork warlord's decision to keep him alive for future entertainment. These are not experiences that leave a person unchanged, even one as iron-willed as Sebastian Yarrick. The case study of Yarrick's captivity illustrates several broader truths about what happens to captured commissars. First, it shows that reputation and perceived value can dramatically alter a prisoner's treatment. Yarrick wasn't just another commissar, but a specific individual whom Gazg-Kul had fought and come to view as a worthy opponent. This saved his life, but also subjected him to unique psychological pressures. Second, it demonstrates the importance of maintaining purpose and identity during captivity. Yarrick never stopped being a commissar, never stopped trying to organize, plan, and resist. This internal consistency provided both psychological armor against degradation and practical benefits through prisoner organization. Third, it reveals the alien nature of Ork psychology and how that alienness can create outcomes that defy human military logic. No human commander would release an enemy officer because future battles would be more fun with them on the other side. Understanding this requires accepting that Orks operate on fundamentally different priorities than human forces. Finally, Yarrick's experience shows that survival of Ork captivity is possible, but comes at tremendous cost. The prisoners who died helping him escape, the indignities endured, the psychological impact of being treated as a trophy, these are weights that even the strongest bear forever. Escape attempts and resistance. The natural human response to captivity is to seek freedom, and commissars, trained in tactics and leadership, often become focal points for prisoner resistance and escape attempts. Understanding these efforts requires examining both their potential and their almost universal failure, as well as what drives prisoners to try, despite the overwhelming odds against success. Organizing resistance among Ork captives faces challenges that go beyond the obvious physical barriers. the prisoner population is typically demoralized, exhausted, and starving. Trust is difficult when starvation drives people to betray each other for scraps. Communication is dangerous when Ork guards or Gretchen overseers might be watching. And any successful resistance requires resources that prisoners simply don't have access to: weapons, tools, food to sustain an escape attempt, medical supplies for the wounded. Yet resistance efforts occur anyway, driven by desperation, hope, and sometimes the sheer refusal to accept defeat. Commissars often find themselves at the center of such efforts, either by choice or by default. Their training in tactics and leadership makes them obvious organizers. Their previous authority, even stripped of official symbols, carries weight among former soldiers. And their own psychology, shaped by decades of refusing to accept defeat, drives them toward action rather than passive acceptance. The most basic form of resistance is simply maintaining human identity and dignity in the face of Ork degradation. This might seem trivial compared to armed rebellion, but psychological resistance has its own importance. Prisoners who maintain routines, who continue to observe imperial feast days even in captivity, who refuse to abandon faith in the emperor despite all evidence of abandonment. These acts preserve the core of what makes them human, rather than broken animals. Commissars often lead this psychological resistance through example, maintaining discipline in how they carry themselves, organizing prayer sessions among willing prisoners, establishing informal hierarchies based on former rank and merit, rather than allowing prisoner society to devolve into might makes right that mirrors Ork culture. All of these represent resistance against the Ork effort to reduce humans to beasts. More active resistance typically begins with intelligence gathering. Prisoners forced to work throughout Ork settlements or aboard space hulks have opportunities to observe and learn. Where are the weapons stored? Which Ork guards are more alert or more lazy? What are the patrol patterns? Where are the vulnerabilities in security? Commissars, trained in military intelligence, often coordinate this gathering, building mental maps and identifying potential opportunities. Communication networks among prisoners are essential but dangerous to establish. Orks are not stupid, despite human propaganda suggesting otherwise. They understand that prisoners who communicate might be plotting, and they respond to discovered communication with brutal violence. Therefore, resistance organizers must develop subtle methods, coded phrases during work details, dead drops in areas prisoners are routinely assigned to clean, trusted couriers who risk severe punishment to carry messages between work crews. A captured commissar, organizing such networks, draws on skills developed during their service. Many commissars have experience working with resistance movements on occupied worlds or coordinating with irregular forces. These skills translate surprisingly well to organizing prison resistance, though the stakes are even higher and the consequences of discovery more immediate. Sabotage represents a middle ground between passive resistance and outright escape attempts. Prisoners who can damage Ork equipment, slow down production, or otherwise hinder the war effort achieve something tangible without requiring the massive coordination that escape attempts demand. A prisoner working on Ork vehicles might introduce subtle flaws that will cause breakdowns during battle. A prisoner in fungus cultivation might contaminate portions of the crop. A prisoner sorting salvage might hide valuable components rather than turning them over. The challenge with sabotage is maintaining plausible deniability. Orks might not be engineering geniuses, but they understand that things should work, and they notice when things don't. If vehicles consistently break down after a particular work crew maintains them, or if fungus crops keep failing in areas where certain prisoners work, the Orks will respond with violence. The saboteur must balance the damage they can inflict against the risk of discovery and collective punishment of all prisoners. Escape attempts themselves fall into several categories based on their scope and organization. Individual escapes are the simplest, but also the most likely to fail. A single prisoner makes a run for it, hoping to reach Imperial lines or simply to die, free rather than in captivity. These attempts almost always fail. Orks are faster and stronger than humans. The surrounding territory is Ork-controlled, and a lone escapee has no resources and limited survival skills for hostile environments. Small group escapes involving 3 to 10 prisoners have marginally better chances. The group can watch each other's backs, share resources, and provide mutual support. But they're still escaping into Ork-controlled territory with no clear destination and limited means. Most are recaptured within hours or days. Those who aren't recaptured often die from exposure, starvation, or attacks by local wildlife. Large organized escapes, attempting to free dozens or hundreds of prisoners simultaneously, require extensive planning and coordination. These are the types of attempts that commissars often lead or facilitate, using their tactical training to maximize the chance of success. Yarek's escape attempt aboard Gazkul's Space Hulk exemplifies this category. Coordinated action by multiple prisoner groups, planned diversions, sacrifices by some to enable others' escape. But even well-planned mass escapes face overwhelming obstacles. The chaos of the initial breakout might work in the prisoner's favor, but it also alerts every Ork in the area that something is happening. Orks respond to prison breaks with enthusiastic violence. It's basically a hunt, which they find entertaining. The escapees are unarmed, weak from captivity, and probably injured. The Orks chasing them are well-armed, fresh, and genuinely enjoy the pursuit. For those rare escape attempts that make it beyond the immediate Ork camp or settlement, new challenges emerge. Where do you go? Ork-infested territory extends in all directions. You have no maps, no supplies, and possibly no idea where the nearest Imperial forces might be. If you're on a planet, you might wander for weeks only to stumble into another Ork settlement. If you're aboard a space hulk or spacecraft, there might literally be nowhere to go. You're trapped in a finite space surrounded by the void. Some escape plans focus not on reaching freedom, but on sending warning to Imperial forces. A prisoner might attempt to reach a communications device or trigger some kind of beacon, hoping to alert the Imperium about Ork positions or intentions, even if they themselves are recaptured. These martyr plays occasionally succeed, with the escapee dying to transmit valuable intelligence. More often, they fail before reaching any communication equipment, and the prisoner dies having accomplished nothing beyond denying the Orks their continued labor. Resistance through non-cooperation represents another strategy, though one with severe limitations. Prisoners might work slowly, deliberately misunderstand Ork instructions, or feign incompetence. The goal is to reduce productivity and hinder Ork operations while maintaining enough productivity to avoid immediate execution. This works only when the Orks care more about the work being done than about specific prisoners doing it. An Ork who values the project will tolerate some inefficiency. An Ork who's already frustrated might simply kill the uncooperative prisoner and grab another. Commissars organizing resistance must make agonizing decisions about how much risk to accept and what goals are realistic. Do you organize a mass escape attempt, knowing that most prisoners will die, but a few might make it? Do you focus on sabotage that helps the Imperial war effort, but does nothing for prisoner survival? Do you maintain psychological resistance, but avoid actions that might provoke Ork retaliation against all prisoners? There are no good answers, only degrees of bad choices. The ethical dimensions grow even more complex when considering the impact on prisoners who aren't part of resistance efforts. Collective punishment is common among Orks. If one prisoner escapes or commits sabotage, the Orks might punish all prisoners in that work crew or section. Is it right to risk those lives for escape attempts that probably won't succeed anyway? A commissar must balance the duty to resist against the duty to minimize harm to those under their informal protection. Success stories do exist, though they are vanishingly rare. Occasionally, an escape attempt coincides with an Imperial assault that provides opportunity for prisoners to reach friendly lines. Sometimes, a prisoner manages to hijack an Ork vessel and actually make it to the warp. though such a journey in a jury-rigged Ork craft is almost as likely to kill them as staying put would be. Very rarely, a prisoner might survive long enough in the wilderness to be found by an Imperial patrol, or to reach a settlement that hasn't yet fallen to the Orks. Yarick's escape from Gaz Kol's space hulk stands out precisely because it was not a success in the traditional sense. He didn't actually escape through his own efforts. Gaz Kul chose to release him, but his organizing of prisoners, his refusal to give up even in the most hopeless circumstances, and his willingness to inspire others to sacrifice themselves for the attempt all demonstrate what resistance looks like in Ork captivity. The psychological impact of failed escape attempts deserves consideration. Each failure drives home the hopelessness of the situation. Prisoners who risked everything to escape, who sacrificed others or were sacrificed themselves, die having achieved nothing but confirming that escape is impossible. This can devastate morale among surviving prisoners. Some give up entirely after watching a failed escape, accepting that they will die in captivity and that resistance only makes the journey to that death more painful. Commissars must navigate this psychological damage while maintaining their own will to resist. How do you encourage hope when every escape attempt fails? How do you organize resistance when the cost is measured in prisoners' lives and the gain is at best marginal? How do you maintain the fighting spirit that makes you a commissar when every action seems to confirm that the Emperor has abandoned you to your fate? Some commissars find meaning in the resistance itself rather than in any hope of success. The act of resistance, of refusing to passively accept captivity, becomes its own form of service to the Emperor. Even if the escape fails, even if the sabotage is discovered, even if the resistance is crushed, the fact that you tried matters. You died fighting rather than waiting for death. You maintained your oath to resist the Emperor's enemies, even when that resistance seemed futile. This philosophy carries its own dangers. Martyrdom is all well and good, but resistance that kills prisoners without achieving anything tangible might be seen as wasting lives that could be preserved for better opportunities. A commissar must judge when resistance serves a purpose, and when it merely satisfies their own need to fight without actually benefiting anyone. The reality is that for most prisoners in Ork captivity, resistance fails. Escape attempts are crushed. Sabotage is discovered and punished. Communication networks are exposed, and the prisoners who tried die, often in ways designed to discourage future attempts. The Orks might not understand all the psychological nuances of deterrence, but they understand that public brutal executions of recaptured escapees send a message to other prisoners. The psychological horror, beyond the physical torments of Ork captivity, lies a psychological dimension that, in many ways, proves even more devastating than beatings, starvation, or forced labor. For a commissar especially, the mental and emotional toll of captivity strikes at the very core of identity and purpose in ways that physical suffering cannot match. The first psychological blow comes from the stripping away of authority and symbols of office. A commissar's entire identity revolves around their role as the Emperor's representative, the enforcer of discipline, the symbol of imperial authority. The bolt pistol at their hip grants power of life and death over Imperial guardsmen. The peaked cap and greatcoat mark them as someone to be feared and respected. The very presence of a commissar can rally wavering troops or cow potential deserters through sheer force of authority. All of that vanishes in an instant upon capture. The weapons are gone. The uniform is torn away. The authority is revealed as conditional, dependent on imperial structures that don't exist in Ork captivity. What remains is simply a human being, no different from any other prisoner, subject to the same degradations and horrors. For someone whose sense of self has been built entirely around their role as commissar, this stripping away of identity can be psychologically devastating. The loss extends beyond personal identity to encompass purpose and meaning. Commissars serve the Emperor. Everything they do, every action they take, every decision they make is framed within that context of service. When captured by Orks and reduced to slavery or entertainment, how does one serve the Emperor? What purpose does survival serve when you cannot fulfill your oath of service? How does one maintain faith when that faith seems to have brought nothing but suffering? These are not abstract theological questions, but immediate psychological pressures. A commissar lying in a prison pen at night, body broken from brutal labor, watching fellow prisoners die from untreated wounds or starvation, must find some way to reconcile their situation with their faith. The Emperor is all-powerful and all-knowing, according to imperial doctrine. So why hasn't he saved them? Why do prayers go unanswered while the Orks continue to prosper in their crude violence? Some commissars resolve this through the concept of testing. Their captivity is a trial, a test of faith designed to strengthen their devotion. The suffering is not abandonment, but tempering, the same way steel is strengthened through heat and hammering. This framework allows them to maintain faith while acknowledging the horror of their circumstances. They are being tested, and their duty is to endure the test without breaking. Others struggle to maintain faith in the face of overwhelming evidence that their prayers are ineffective. They might still go through the motions, reciting catechisms, observing prayer times as best they can estimate in captivity, but the emotional connection to those acts fades. Faith becomes habit rather than conviction, performed because that's what a commissar does, rather than from any genuine belief that it matters. The witnessing of atrocity takes its own psychological toll. Commissars are not strangers to violence. They have ordered executions, led charges into horrific combat, and witnessed the worst that warfare can inflict. But Ork captivity exposes them to cruelty of a different flavor: random, purposeless, casually inflicted suffering that serves no military or tactical purpose. An Ork might grab a prisoner and pull them apart simply because it's amusing. Another might use prisoners for target practice, laughing as humans scramble desperately to avoid being shot. A third might force prisoners to fight each other to the death over a scrap of food, finding entertainment in human desperation. These acts serve no purpose beyond amusement, and witnessing them erodes something essential in the viewer's psyche. For a commissar who has been trained to see suffering through the lens of necessity and duty, this purposeless cruelty is particularly difficult to process. When you execute a guardsman for cowardice, that death serves a purpose: maintaining discipline, preventing panic, upholding the authority that keeps the regiment functional. But when an Ork casually murders a prisoner for laughs, what purpose does that serve? How do you incorporate such meaningless evil into a worldview built around duty and necessary sacrifice? The erosion of identity extends to the basic aspects of human dignity. Prisoners in Ork camps have no privacy, no personal space, no control over the most basic bodily functions. They eat when and if the Orks provide food, drink from contaminated water sources, relieve themselves wherever they can because there are no facilities provided. They sleep piled together for warmth, often in conditions that would make livestock pens look luxurious. For a commissar, accustomed to the privileges of rank, private quarters, regular meals, access to hygiene facilities, this reduction to animal conditions is profoundly dehumanizing, not because they view themselves as above such hardships in principle, but because the systematic stripping away of all dignity reinforces the message that they are no longer a person of authority, but simply meat to be used and discarded. The psychological impact of forced participation in entertainment violence deserves special attention. Being forced to kill fellow humans for Ork amusement, whether in fighting pits or through other cruel games, creates moral injury that physical wounds cannot match. The commissar must choose between death through refusal or survival through murder of innocents. Neither option is morally acceptable, yet a choice must be made. This impossible choice haunts survivors, the faces of those killed, the memory of their eyes in the moment before death, the feeling of a weapon plunging into human flesh. These become intrusive memories that recur during any quiet moment. Sleep, when it comes, brings nightmares. Waking hours feature sudden flashbacks triggered by random stimuli. The psychological mechanism of dissociation might protect during the actual violence, but afterwards, the mind struggles to integrate these acts into a coherent self-image. For commissars specifically, this creates a dark mirror of their normal duties. They have executed cowards and failures, acts they justified as necessary for military discipline and the emperor's service. Now they're forced to kill the innocent and desperate for the entertainment of Xenos. The parallelism is uncomfortable, potentially leading to questioning of past actions and the moral foundation of commissarial authority itself. The social dynamics among prisoners create additional psychological pressures. In theory, shared suffering should create solidarity and mutual support. In practice, starvation and desperation often turn prisoners against each other. People inform on escape plans for extra rations. They betray trust for slight advantages. They abandon the weak and injured because helping them might reduce their own survival chances. A commissar attempting to maintain order and mutual support faces the erosion of human decency under pressure. Former soldiers who would have followed orders without question now fight each other over scraps. People who once stood shoulder to shoulder in battle line now inform on each other to curry favor with Ork guards. The commissar sees, in Microcosm, what happens to human society when imperial structures are stripped away and survival becomes the only imperative. This can lead to profound disillusionment. If human nature is such that people turn on each other so readily when circumstances become difficult, what does that say about the Imperium itself? Is the Emperor's authority the only thing preventing humanity from descending into this kind of degraded self-interest? And if so, what happens when that authority is absent, as it clearly is in Ork captivity? The passage of time itself becomes a psychological weapon. With no way to accurately track days or months, time becomes a blur of endless suffering. Was I captured a month ago or a year ago? How long have I been enslaved? This temporal disorientation erodes the sense of self. We define ourselves partly through our personal history, but when that history becomes an indistinct mass of undifferentiated suffering, who are we? For some prisoners, this disorientation is almost merciful. If you can't remember how long you've suffered, perhaps the suffering becomes more bearable. For others, it's another layer of horror. The loss of temporal continuity feels like losing pieces of self, watching your identity erode day by day until what remains barely recognizes the person you were before capture. Commissars often try to maintain temporal awareness through various methods, marking days by scratching tallies on surfaces, establishing routines to give structure to time, organizing regular prayer sessions at fixed intervals. These efforts serve dual purposes, maintaining temporal orientation and preserving a sense of control and order in an environment designed to strip away both. The question of hope versus acceptance creates its own psychological torment. Should you maintain hope for rescue or escape, using that hope as motivation to survive another day? Or should you accept that you will die in captivity and find peace in that acceptance? Both approaches have psychological costs. Hope maintained in the face of endless disappointment can be more painful than hopelessness. But accepting death might make you give up too soon, failing to take advantage of opportunities that might actually arise. Commissars walk this line constantly, both for themselves and for other prisoners who look to them for guidance. Encourage too much hope, and you set people up for devastating disappointment. Encourage too much acceptance, and you create a population of broken individuals who won't even try to survive. Finding the balance requires wisdom and psychological resilience that captivity steadily erodes. The ultimate psychological horror might be the fear that you're losing your humanity entirely. When you've been reduced to an animal existence for long enough, when you've done terrible things to survive, when you've lost track of who you were and why anything matters, are you still human in any meaningful sense? Or have the Orks succeeded in their unconscious project of reducing you to the level of a beast? This existential crisis strikes particularly hard at Commissars. Their entire identity rests on being exemplars of humanity at its most disciplined and purposeful. To lose that, to become just another broken animal scrabbling for survival, represents a failure more profound than death. Death can be accepted as service to the Emperor, but degradation to the point where you can no longer recognize yourself as having been a servant of the Emperor, that's a horror that keeps Commissars fighting for psychological survival, even when physical survival seems impossible. Some find meaning in bearing witness. Even if they cannot escape, even if they will die in captivity, maintaining their awareness and memory matters. Someone must remember what happened here, must preserve the knowledge of this suffering so it isn't lost to Imperial records. This purpose might seem small, but it provides a framework for endurance. You survive to remember, to bear witness, so that if rescue ever comes, or you somehow escape, you can testify to what occurred. Others retreat into fantasy or dissociation as protective mechanisms. They mentally remove themselves from the horror, imagining they're somewhere else, or constructing elaborate mental scenarios where they're rescued or successful in escape. This psychological escape provides relief, but also carries dangers. Too much retreat into fantasy means you're not paying attention to the real environment, missing opportunities or threats. And the return to reality from fantasy becomes increasingly painful. Each crash back to awareness of captivity, a fresh wound. The psychological horror of Ork captivity is, in many ways, worse than the physical torments, because it strikes at the very core of who a person is. Physical wounds heal, given time and treatment. But psychological wounds, the erosion of identity and purpose, the moral injury of forced participation in atrocity, the existential crisis of faith tested to destruction, these cut deeper and last longer than any beating or starvation could manage. The final fates. Every story of Ork captivity ends, though the endings vary dramatically in their particulars. For Commissars and other prisoners held by the Greenskins, several possible fates await, each terrible in its own way. Understanding these endings provides crucial context for the entire experience of captivity. Death in combat represents perhaps the most acceptable fate from an Imperial perspective. Prisoners forced into fighting pits or used as battlefield cannon fodder might die with weapons in their hands, even if those weapons are crude and the combat is involuntary. For a Commissar who has lived by the creed of dying in service to the Emperor, death in combat retains some shred of dignity, even when that combat serves Ork entertainment rather than Imperial glory. These deaths usually come quickly, a mercy in itself. A killing blow from a gladiatorial opponent, a beast's claws, tearing through vital organs, a stray shot during the chaos when Orks use prisoners as living shields. All of these end suffering in moments rather than drawing it out over weeks or months. The prisoner's last moments might be filled with fear and pain, but at least they are last moments, an end to the degradation and horror. For some, death in combat is actively sought. After weeks or months of slavery, the fighting pit becomes an opportunity to die on one's own terms. Fight hard, perhaps take down an opponent or even an Ork guard, then go down swinging. It's not the glorious death a Commissar might have imagined during their service, dying in a heroic charge against the Emperor's enemies. But it's a death that at least involves fighting rather than passive, waiting for the end. Death, through being worked to exhaustion, represents a slower, more grinding fate. The prisoner labors under brutal conditions, inadequate food, and constant stress until their body simply gives out. This might take weeks for someone already wounded or sick, months for the healthier and stronger. The end, when it comes, often involves collapse during work, followed by casual disposal, thrown on a refuse heap, left where they fell, or simply killed outright if they're interfering with ongoing work. This manner of death offers no dignity, no moment of defiance, no final assertion of humanity. The prisoner simply grinds down like a worn tool until they're no longer functional, at which point they're discarded. For a commissar who has executed soldiers for failing in their duty, dying of exhaustion while enslaved by Xenos represents an irony too bitter to contemplate. The very weakness they punished in others becomes their own fate. Some prisoners reach the point where their bodies fail, but their minds remain aware, lying in some corner of the prison pen, too weak to move, knowing that death is hours or days away, but not yet here. Other prisoners might offer comfort if they can spare the energy, or they might ignore the dying, needing to conserve their own strength for survival. The Orks certainly don't care. A dying prisoner is simply taking up space that could be used for something else. Becoming Ork food represents perhaps the most viscerally horrifying fate. Orks are omnivorous and not particularly discriminating about what they eat. Humans, particularly weak and injured humans who are no longer useful as slaves, represent a readily available food source. The Orks don't view this as particularly noteworthy. Food is food, and if you're hungry and there's a dead or dying human available, why not eat it? Some prisoners are killed specifically for this purpose. An Ork celebrating a victory might grab a prisoner and roast them for the feast. An Ork who's gotten hungry during guard duty might simply eat a prisoner rather than wait for proper food. The death itself might be quick, a swift blow to the head before butchering. But prisoners who witness such acts carry the knowledge that this could be their fate, that they might end up as ingredients in Ork stew. The psychological impact of knowing you might be eaten cannot be overstated. It reduces human existence to the level of livestock, lower even than slavery. A slave at least serves a purpose beyond their meat. Food is simply consumed and forgotten. For a commissar who has spent their life as a symbol of imperial authority, the thought of ending as an Ork's meal is perhaps the ultimate degradation. Disease represents another common endpoint. The conditions in Ork camps ensure that illness spreads easily among the malnourished, wounded, and stressed prisoner population. Infections from untreated wounds, respiratory diseases from spore-filled air, digestive ailments from contaminated food and water, parasites from the unsanitary environment, all of these can kill given enough time and lack of medical care. Death from disease is often slow and miserable. Fever, delirium, pain that builds gradually rather than striking all at once. The sufferer might linger for days or weeks, draining resources and attention from other prisoners who might try to help. Eventually, the disease wins, the prisoner dies, and their body is disposed of with the same casual efficiency as any other waste product. For commissars specifically, there's a particular irony in dying of disease. These are individuals who have survived battlefields where artillery rained down and gunfire filled the air. They've faced charging Orks, heretic cultists, and worse. But in the end, it's an infection from a simple wound or an illness contracted from contaminated water that kills them. There's no glory in such a death, no moment of heroism, just the slow degradation of the body until it can no longer sustain life. Execution, either for attempted escape or simply for Ork amusement, claims many prisoners. The methods vary based on Ork whim. Some prisoners are shot, providing target practice for Orks. Others are beaten to death, offering entertainment and exercise for the Orks doing the beating. Still others might be fed to dangerous beasts, thrown from heights, or killed in any of a dozen other ways that Orks find entertaining. These executions often serve as public spectacles, lessons to other prisoners about what happens when you displease the Orks. A prisoner caught attempting escape might be killed in view of all other prisoners, the message clear. This is what happens when you try to leave. The death is drawn out not from careful cruelty, but from Ork enthusiasm. They're having fun, why rush it? For the prisoner being executed, there might be a strange relief mixed with the terror. The end is coming, and while it's painful and degrading, at least it's an end. No more waiting, no more enduring, no more watching fellow prisoners die while wondering when your turn will come. The execution, however brutal, represents finality. The rare fate of rescue deserves mention, though it occurs so seldom that most prisoners never even consider it a real possibility. Sometimes, Imperial forces assault an Ork-held position and free prisoners in the process. Sometimes, a prisoner's location becomes known to the Imperium, and a rescue operation is mounted. Sometimes, circumstances simply align in ways that allow prisoners to be recovered. But rescue brings its own complications. The prisoners who are recovered are not the same people who were captured. Weeks or months of torture, starvation, and degradation have changed them fundamentally. Physically, they're often in terrible condition, malnourished, wounded, diseased. Psychologically, the scars cut even deeper. How do you process what you've endured? How do you return to normal Imperial service after being reduced to an animal existence? For rescued commissars, these questions become particularly acute. Can you resume your duties as an enforcer of discipline when you've experienced the utter dissolution of discipline in Ork captivity? Can you execute soldiers for cowardice when you know intimately what it feels like to be powerless and terrified? Can you maintain the image of unwavering Imperial authority when you've been a broken slave? Some rescued commissars find their way back to service, either through sheer force of will or by compartmentalizing their captivity experience as something separate from their identity as Imperial officers. Others are quietly retired, deemed too psychologically damaged to effectively serve. Still others might be transferred to roles where their experience with Ork captivity is valuable. Intelligence gathering, prisoner debriefing, training others in resistance techniques, but where they don't need to maintain the persona of the perfect commissar. Escape, even rarer than rescue, occasionally succeeds. A prisoner manages to slip away during the chaos of battle, survives the journey through Ork-infested territory, and reaches Imperial lines. Or a prisoner aboard a space hulk finds a functional spacecraft and somehow makes it to the warp and then to Imperial space. Or a rescue operation creates enough confusion that a prisoner can break free and disappear before the Orks realize they're gone. Escaped prisoners face challenges similar to those rescued, with the added weight of having left other prisoners behind. Survivor's guilt is nearly universal among escapees. Why did I survive when so many others died? Could I have saved more people if I'd tried harder? Did I betray the others by escaping when I could have stayed to organize resistance or provide comfort? For escaped commissars, these questions intersect with their sense of duty and honor. A commissar is supposed to be the last one standing, rallying troops even as the position falls. Escaping, even when tactically sound and fully justified, might feel like abandonment of duty. The commissar who escapes might spend the rest of their life questioning whether they made the right choice, whether they should have stayed and died with the other prisoners rather than saving themselves. The final fate that deserves mention, though it is almost never acknowledged in Imperial records, is psychological death while the body still lives. Some prisoners simply break completely. Their minds retreat so far from the horror of their circumstances that they become effectively non-functional. They stop eating, stop responding to stimuli, stop engaging with the world in any meaningful way. The body persists for a time, but the person is already gone. This is not suicide in the active sense, though it accomplishes the same end. It's more a withdrawal so complete that death becomes inevitable. The Orks don't understand or care about this phenomenon. A prisoner who stops functioning is simply discarded like any other piece of broken equipment. But for the prisoner themselves, the mental retreat might represent the only escape available when all others have failed. For commissars who witness this happening to other prisoners or feel themselves sliding toward this fate, it represents the ultimate horror. To be so broken that you lose even the will to preserve your own existence, to retreat so far from identity and purpose that nothing remains but a shell, this is failure more complete than any battlefield defeat. Commissars fight against this fate with every tool at their disposal, clinging to purpose and identity as desperately as they once clung to their weapons in battle. The variety of possible ends, each terrible in its own way, creates a pervasive uncertainty that weighs on prisoners throughout their captivity. You don't know how you'll die, only that you almost certainly will. Will it be quick or slow, violent or peaceful? Will you die with some shred of dignity intact or reduced completely to the level of an animal? These questions have no answers until the moment arrives, and the not knowing might be worse than any specific knowledge would be. Conclusion and reflection. We have journeyed through the nightmare of Ork captivity as experienced by commissars, those symbols of imperial authority and discipline. From the moment of capture through slavery, entertainment violence, and the various endings that might await, we've explored a fate that is, in many ways, worse than clean death in battle. The horror of this experience operates on multiple levels. Physically, prisoners endure starvation, beatings, forced labor, and sometimes gladiatorial combat. The Ork camps are places where human life is valued only for its utility or entertainment value, where suffering is casual and death is arbitrary. The body is broken down systematically, ground away by work, malnutrition, and violence until it simply cannot continue. But perhaps more terrible is the psychological dimension. The stripping away of identity and authority, the forced participation in atrocity, the witnessing of meaningless cruelty, the erosion of faith and purpose under the weight of endless degradation. These strike at the very core of who a person is. For commissars especially, whose entire sense of self is built around their role as the emperor's representatives, this psychological assault can be more devastating than any physical torture. The case of Commissar Sebastian Jarek provides our clearest window into this nightmare and also illustrates important exceptions to the general pattern. Jarek was not just any commissar, but a specific individual whom his captor recognized as a worthy opponent. This saved his life, but also subjected him to unique psychological pressures. His experience shows both the horror of standard Ork captivity and the strange dynamics that can emerge when exceptional individuals collide. What enabled Jarek to survive? Multiple factors played roles. His reputation and the perverse respect Gazgul held for him certainly helped. An ordinary commissar would likely have been killed or worked to death. His tactical brilliance allowed him to organize other prisoners and plan escape attempts. His iron will prevented the psychological dissolution that claimed so many captives. And ultimately, luck or the Emperor's providence placed him in Gazgul's hands rather than those of a less contemplative Ork. But survival came at tremendous cost. Jarek endured weeks of slavery and degradation. He witnessed the deaths of dozens of prisoners who sacrificed themselves for his escape attempt. He experienced the profound psychological disruption of being released, not through his own efforts, but because an Ork warlord found him too interesting to kill. These experiences left marks that even Jarek's formidable will could not entirely erase. For most commissars captured by Orks, the story ends less ambiguously than Jarek's did. They die in fighting pits, from disease, from exhaustion, from execution, or from becoming Ork food. The rare few who are rescued or manage to escape carry psychological scars that never fully heal. They have seen and experienced things that challenge their faith, their identity, and their understanding of their place in the Imperium. The broader implications of this examination extend beyond individual commissars to questions about imperial doctrine and military policy. The Imperium trains commissars to be unwavering symbols of authority, to enforce discipline through fear and respect, to embody the Emperor's will on the battlefield. But what happens when those symbols are captured and degraded? Does it serve Imperial interests to have commissars who might be captured and broken, potentially damaging the mystique of commissarial authority? Some within the Officio Prefectus argue that commissars facing certain capture should execute themselves rather than risk the propaganda value their captivity might provide to enemies. Others argue that suicide represents failure of duty, and that commissars must endure whatever trials the Emperor sends them, including captivity, as tests of faith. These debates have no clear resolution, reflecting deeper tensions within Imperial military philosophy. For commissars serving in active war zones where Ork contact is likely, the knowledge of what captivity might mean influences tactical decisions. Some commissars fight even harder to avoid capture, preferring death in battle to the degradation of slavery. Others carry concealed means of suicide, poison, a small weapon, anything that might allow a quick death if capture becomes inevitable. Still others prepare themselves mentally for the possibility, attempting to steel themselves against horrors they hope never to experience. The role of faith deserves particular emphasis in our conclusion. For a commissar, faith in the Emperor is supposed to provide strength and purpose, even in the darkest circumstances. But Ork captivity tests that faith in ways that battlefields never do. On the battlefield, you can see your service to the Emperor manifest through your actions. You maintain discipline, you inspire troops, you fight the Emperor's enemies. In Ork captivity, how do you serve? What purpose does your suffering fulfill? Why does the Emperor permit his servants to endure such degradation? Some commissars emerge from captivity with their faith intact, or even strengthened, viewing their ordeal as a trial that proved their devotion. Others lose their faith entirely, unable to reconcile the horror they experienced with belief in a benevolent or even attentive Emperor. Most fall somewhere between these extremes, maintaining the forms of faith while quietly harboring doubts they can never fully articulate or resolve. The final reflection must be on the nature of the enemy. The Orks are not sophisticated torturers like the Dark Eldar, who inflict suffering as art and sustenance. They are not systematic oppressors like the Tau, who might attempt to re-educate and convert their prisoners. They are living weapons, engineered for endless war, who view humans as resources to be exploited and obstacles to be destroyed. They understand neither mercy nor cruelty in human terms, only utility and entertainment. This makes them, in some ways, more terrifying than more sophisticated enemies. You cannot negotiate with Orks, cannot appeal to shared values or common ground, cannot convince them to show mercy. This makes them, in some ways, more terrifying than more sophisticated enemies. You cannot negotiate with Orks, cannot appeal to shared values or common ground, cannot convince them to show mercy. They operate on principles so alien to human thinking that any attempt to find common understanding is doomed from the start. You are simply a thing to them, useful while you work, entertaining while you fight, edible when you're neither. Understanding what happens when Orks capture a commissar requires grappling with this fundamental alienness. The degradation, the slavery, the random violence, the casual consumption of human life. None of this stems from malice as humans understand it. The Orks aren't trying to be cruel. They're simply being what they were engineered to be. Weapons that think. Organisms designed for endless war. Creatures to whom battle and violence are as natural as breathing. For the commissars who endure this nightmare and survive, whether through rescue, escape, or the rare circumstance of being released, the experience becomes a defining element of their identity. They have been broken down to nothing and somehow rebuilt themselves. They have witnessed the dissolution of imperial authority and the failure of faith to protect. They have done terrible things to survive and watched others die despite doing everything possible to live. Some find meaning in bearing witness, in ensuring that the suffering is not forgotten. Others dedicate themselves to preparing the Imperium for future Ork conflicts, using their intimate knowledge of the enemy to save lives and prevent others from experiencing similar fates. Still others simply endure, carrying their scars in silence and trying to rebuild some semblance of the life and identity they had before capture. The question that haunts every survivor and every commissar who contemplates this possibility is whether survival itself is worth the cost. Is it better to die with honor on the battlefield, maintaining your identity and faith intact, or to survive captivity at the cost of everything that made you who you were? The answer varies for each individual, shaped by circumstances, personality, and the particular horrors they encountered or might encounter. What remains constant is that Ork captivity represents one of the gravest fates that can befall an Imperial Commissar. It strips away everything that defines them: authority, dignity, purpose, faith, and reduces them to the most basic struggle for survival. Those who endure and return are forever changed, carrying wounds that never fully heal and memories that never fade. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But within that war exist gradations of horror, and Ork captivity occupies a special place among them. It is a fate that makes death in battle seem merciful by comparison, a nightmare that proves there are indeed fates worse than dying for the Emperor. For the Commissars who face this possibility every time they take to the field against the greenskin hordes, the knowledge of what might await them if they fall becomes part of the burden they bear. It is one more weight added to the already crushing responsibility of maintaining discipline, upholding faith, and embodying the Emperor's will. And for those who actually experience this horror and somehow survive, they become living testaments to human resilience and the terrible cost of service to the Imperium. As we conclude this examination, remember that behind every statistic of prisoners taken, every intelligence report of Ork camps, every mention of slaves in greenskin hands, there are individual human beings experiencing unimaginable suffering. Some of them are commissars, those symbols of imperial authority reduced to the lowest possible state. Their stories, whether they end in death or survival, deserve to be told and remembered. The tale of Commissar Sebastian Yarrick stands as the most famous example, but countless other commissars have faced similar fates in obscurity. Their names are not recorded in imperial histories. Their sacrifices are not celebrated in propaganda posters. They simply disappeared into the green tide, their final moments known only to the Orks who killed them and the Emperor who supposedly watches over all humanity. Yet their suffering matters. Every commissar who endures Ork captivity, who maintains some shred of humanity in the face of systematic dehumanization, who refuses to break completely even when breaking would be easier, proves that the human spirit can endure even the darkest trials. They demonstrate that faith and purpose can survive even when stripped of all external supports. They show that the Emperor's servants can maintain their oaths even when it seems the Emperor himself has abandoned them. This is not a story of triumph in the conventional sense. Most captured commissars die in slavery or fighting pits. Most never escape or get rescued. Most endure horrors that would shatter lesser individuals and then die anyway, their suffering achieving nothing tangible for the imperial war effort. But their resistance matters nonetheless. Every day survived is a day the Orks didn't break them. Every moment of maintained dignity is a victory against the degradation. Every prayer offered in captivity is an assertion of faith against despair. The Imperium will continue to send commissars into battle against the Orks. The green tide will continue to sweep across worlds, capturing and enslaving those it doesn't kill outright. And commissars will continue to fall into Ork hands, experiencing the nightmares we've explored tonight. This cycle will not end as long as both the Imperium and the Orks exist, which means it will likely continue until the heat death of the universe or the final victory of chaos. But understanding what these captured commissars endure matters. It reminds us that the cost of humanity's survival is measured not just in glorious battles and heroic sacrifices, but also in the quiet suffering of those who disappear into enemy hands. It challenges us to remember that behind every symbol of imperial authority stands a human being capable of fear, pain, and despair. And it forces us to confront the question of what we would do in similar circumstances, whether we would maintain our humanity or surrender to the degradation. The Orks represent everything the Imperium claims to stand against: chaos instead of order, violence instead of discipline, crude strength instead of noble purpose. When a commissar falls into their hands, it's not just an individual tragedy, but a symbolic inversion of imperial values. The enforcer of discipline becomes the victim of chaos. The symbol of order is subjected to random violence. The embodiment of purpose is reduced to meaningless suffering. Yet even in this inversion, even in this apparent defeat of everything imperial authority represents, there remains the possibility of resistance. Not the dramatic resistance of escape or rescue, though those occasionally occur, but the quiet, grinding resistance of simply refusing to become what the Orks want you to be, maintaining some core of identity, preserving some thread of faith, holding on to some fragment of the person you were before capture. This is the real story of what happens when Orks capture a commissar. Not tales of glorious escapes or heroic defiance, though those elements exist, but the much darker, more difficult story of human beings stripped of everything that defined them, forced to find meaning and purpose in circumstances that seem designed to destroy both. It's a story of survival at terrible cost, of endurance in the face of hopelessness, of faith tested to destruction, and sometimes, somehow, emerging intact on the other side. If you found this deep dive into one of the darkest corners of Warhammer 40,000 lore valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows us to continue exploring the untold stories and uncomfortable truths of the grim darkness of the far future. We examine not just the glory and heroism that imperial propaganda celebrates, but also the suffering and sacrifice that often goes unacknowledged. In our next exploration, we'll delve into another aspect of the Warhammer universe that deserves closer examination. Until then, remember that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And within that war, suffering beyond measure for those who fall into enemy hands. The Emperor protects, we are told, but for the commissars captured by Orks, that protection failed. What remains is only the question of whether they can protect themselves, maintain themselves, and endure until death finally grants the release that the Emperor did not provide. It is a grim fate, a terrible burden, and a nightmare that stalks every commissar who takes to the field against the green tide. May the Emperor have mercy on those who fall, and may we never forget what they endure in the darkness, far from the glory of imperial propaganda and the comfort of faith's easy answers. Their suffering is real, their pain matters, and their stories, however dark, deserve to be told. Thank you for watching.